Hello, everybody. Welcome to March's collaborative mentoring webinar series. Thanks so much for joining us today. Our webinar today will be a youth town hall with some really amazing young people talking about how mentoring programs and mentors can support mental wellness. As you're coming in, we'll give folks a couple more minutes to join. But in the meantime, we want to get to know who's in the room with us. So feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. Drop your name, drop your location, where you're calling in from. And we'll get started in just another minute or two. We already have over 100 people in the room. That's very exciting. Thank you all for joining us. All right, we're getting some responses. Iowa, Florida, Louisiana. We got the Nebraska love it. Colorado, Portland. Wow, everybody's everywhere all at once. Won an Oscar this past weekend. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. Great movie. Awesome. For folks joining in, we're going to give it another minute or two, but we do just want to welcome you to March's collaborative mentoring webinar series. This will be a youth town hall, and so we'll hear from, again, some really amazing and thoughtful and dedicated youth on how mentoring and mentoring programs can support mental wellness, and also get to hear about a program and then also some statistics on mental health. So it's going to be a really amazing call. And of course, feel free to continue to talk in the chat, connect with one another, ask questions. We'll have time for all of that today. We got Indianapolis, Texas, Delaware. Amazing. From the Caribbean. That's awesome. Baltimore, Maryland. I'm from Baltimore. Love that, Michael. Very nice. All right. So we have almost 150 folks in the room today. So that's very exciting. Thanks so much for joining us. One last time, we will be talking about how mentoring and mentoring programs can support youth mental wellness in today's town hall. For some brief tips on engaging with this webinar, all attendees are muted for best sound, so just keep that in mind. But we do still want to hear from you all, so make sure to type in questions in the Q&A panel and type in comments in the chat box. Both of those buttons will be at the bottom of your screen. And then also, if you would like, we have the live caption or live transcript option. And to get that, you just click on that CC button at the bottom of the screen. We do have a couple polls, again, just to get to know folks in the room and see who we're talking to. So I will launch those right now. So the first poll should be popping up on your screen right now, and it's about experience level. So feel free to answer that, and we'll get a sense of how many beginners, experienced, experts, everybody's welcome. But we love to see where everybody's coming from. So give another couple seconds or so. Thanks all who have introduced yourself in the chat. If you haven't already, feel free to. We'd love to get to know you. And again, feel free to connect with folks either through private chat or in the general chat. Make some friends, build community. We'd love to see it. All right, awesome. I'll end this poll. So it looks like we have a good spread. We have mostly experienced folks in the room, so that's good to know in terms of our conversation and steering that today. We have a couple other polls. So the next poll will be, what is your role in the mentoring field? So we'll launch that one right now. And again, I know that this is just a choose one sort of situation, but I know that we all sort of take on a million different roles in this space. So whatever one you're feeling like today, whatever hat you're wearing as you're calling in right now. Awesome. So I'll end that poll. Looks like we have, again, a lot of mentoring program staff and practitioners. We have a good amount of mentors in the room, which is really awesome to see. Educators, funders, etc. Great. And then lastly, we have a fun, unique poll specific to this webinar. Since we are hearing from youth today, we kind of want to get a sense of the generation makeup of the folks that are attending these webinars. So I know generations, and it's a hot topic, and these sometimes are arbitrary cutoffs. So feel free to pick whichever one feels best to you. Again, I know sometimes these cutoffs differ between people and organizations. I put Gen Alpha in there. I don't know if there are any 10-year-olds in the room, but I figured that would be cool, and I didn't want to exclude Gen Alpha. Give it another couple of seconds. Bethany, that's a great point. I feel like there's a lot of blurriness when it comes to Gen Z and millennials. I think I'm somewhere in the middle, personally. I think I would be classified as Gen Z, but awesome. All right, thank you all so much for participating in that. Looks like the majority of us are millennials, and then Gen X, Gen Z, and the baby boomer generation are all pretty similar. So again, we have a pretty cool spread. All right. And those are our polls for today. So we'll move on to the next slide. Just a reminder, all of the materials and resources and slides and recording will all be sent out in an email after this webinar about 5 days from now. But you can also always access all of these things from our website. And now to introduce our amazing facilitator, we have Alana Palmier, who uses she, they pronouns and is an AmeriCorps member serving with Mentor Nebraska as the expansion and outreach coordinator. Her primary functions in this position are to expand and deepen relationships with BIPOC and LGBTQIA2S+ inclusive mentoring programs. Alana graduated cum laude from Creighton University in 2021 with a bachelor's in sociology and criminal justice policy, with minors in theater and women and gender studies. Alana is passionate about the theatrical arts. She directed her first play, Riot Repeat, in 2019 and wrote their first full-length play based on her college research project titled I Am a Black Woman, a show that traps the audience in the psyche of a Black woman as the layers of her identity are put on display. She went on to produce this show at the Omaha Fringe Festival in August 2022 and again at Benson Theater in November 2022. In her position, Alana has thoroughly enjoyed being mentored by the staff that welcomed her onto the team. Having not grown up with a formal mentor, she has witnessed and experienced the undeniable value of being mentored by a strong-willed group of unique individuals. So from here, I'll pass it on over to Alana. Make sure to show Alana some love in the chat. And we're very grateful to have you today.
Thank you so much, Jake. So like you said, my name is Alana Palmier, she, they, and I'm just really excited to be here to have this conversation with you all, with this brilliant group of human beings, and to be able to facilitate this conversation. So today, first I'll start off by reading off our objectives for this conversation. We want to situate the research about the need for mentoring to support youth mental health. We want to hear from young people with a variety of backgrounds and identities on the youth experiences in mentoring programs. We are to learn directly from youth what they need from adults regarding mental health support within mentoring programs. And we also want to share innovative ways to embed mental health support in mentoring relationships. So mentors are a valuable asset to young people, especially when they're experiencing moments of depression, those periods of anxiety, and just any serious mental health challenge that may arise in their young lives. The natural role of a mentor itself is this idea that this person is present throughout this young person's life, through the good times, through the bad, and especially through the hopeless and overwhelming moments that may come up. having that more experienced adult who's been through more life and who has made it through just shows that it's a great benefit to young people, just to know that they won't get stuck or remain stagnant in those dark periods in life, that they can get through wherever they are in life and see through a brighter time. Some of the earliest studies of youth mentoring programs in the United States document that not only do mentoring programs supply meaningful services to youth with varied mental health circumstances, but also they provide meaningful support and reductions in symptoms of depression and other mental health conditions. For young people, 50% of all mental health conditions begin by the age of 14, and 75% of those conditions, are present by the time they turn 24. So before I go ahead and introduce our lovely panelists, I want to provide some more relevant statistics that are related to the mental health challenges that young people have faced and continue to endure, especially as a result of the pandemic from 2020. 1 in 6 young people have a mental health condition, but only half receive any form of mental health service to address their need. A recent study actually found that over 25% of high school students reported declines in their mental health due to the pandemic. A 2021 study found that 2/3 of all high school students felt that they were unable to cope with sources of stress within their lives. For LGBTQIA2S+ youth, they have experienced extremely high rates of anxiety, reporting up to 73%, as well as depression, reporting up to 67% during the pandemic. The pandemic also took its toll on younger children, with 22% of parents to elementary age children reporting worsening mental and emotional health. On top of all of this, America's youth were struggling long before the pandemic occurred. The suicide rate for young people between the ages of 10 and 24 actually increased by 60% between the years 2007 and 2018, with research indicating significant increases during the pandemic. And actually for this age group and going up to age 34, the second leading cause of death for this age group is suicide. And the last statistic I'd like to provide for you all is from the Trevor Project, which is a crisis center that provides support to queer youth, which reports that having at least one accepting adult can reduce the risk of a suicide attempt among LGBTQIA2S+ youth by 40%. So now that we have some background, I want to introduce our panelists today, and we'll go ahead and start with Tori.
Good afternoon, y'all. Thank you so much for giving me the space to talk. Happy to be here. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I'm currently a senior majoring in sociology at UNO. I'm also currently the student body president and student region over at UNO. So, going out strong, about to graduate in December, hopefully, and looking forward to it. I currently work as a 988 crisis counselor, and so mental health has definitely been a huge part of not only my professional journey thus far, but also just as my personal journey has gone on, and then the journey of those close to me and my peers. So really excited to hear from the other panelists and hopefully be of help and provide some insight today as well.
Thank you, Tori. Let's go ahead and go to Lucas.
All right, hi. Yeah, my name is Lucas. I am a big for the voice program here in Grand Island. This is my first webinar, and I've always struggled with social anxiety, so it's a bit hard for me to get words out sometimes. I'm really happy to be here. I've spent a lot of time and a majority of my life in South Dakota, so it's not too much of a landscape change. And it's been really hard adjusting, but I'm really glad to be here to speak on this panel.
Thanks so much, Lucas. And our third panelist for today, we have PJ.
Hey everyone, I'm Penelope, otherwise known as PJ. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am currently a junior at Omaha South High School. I'm here through NCPA, which is which is a big program through the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And part of that program is they provide college mentors to the high school students that are a part of that program. So yeah, I'm here with them today.
Nice, thank you, PJ. And so shout out to all these brilliant panelists today. We're gonna have a great discussion, so let's get into it. Our first question we have is, what do you want adults to know about the mental health challenges young people face today? And if Tori, if you want to go ahead and kick us off with this one.
Absolutely. I think that one of the most important things that sounds like, okay, duh, but it's super important is to remember that every single statistic that we talk about has a face and a name and has a very unique set of experiences, even though the experiences that they're going through as far as their mental health may not be very unique. Many, and I'm sure as many of you have been aware of or have experienced in your own lives, these mental health challenges, this depression, this anxiety, especially worsening after the pandemic, and especially for queer young people, extremely common. And so just knowing that these stories that you hear of, it's likely that you work with somebody who you just haven't heard that experience come from them. It's likely that they have that insight. It's likely that they've lived through that or found a way to cope. And so just being willing to provide space for people to feel safe enough to share those experiences, I think you'll be surprised at how many, for better or for worse, similar experiences people have, but also how much that similar things can help as long as we're willing to tailor them to each person's needs.
That was great, Tori, especially talking about how to tailor it to each individual person, because we're all individual people at the end of the day, and everyone's going through their own independent struggles. So thank you for that. Do any of our other panelists have anything they want to contribute to that?
Yeah. So, as times have changed, and they always do, for the last 20, 30 years, it's not the same. We are going through entirely different struggles as time progresses. What I've noticed is that a lot of our generation, we are pushed in school to learn a lot. Like, there is a lot of things that we need to know, that we have to know in a certain amount of time, that it's especially hard. Like, I have seen people struggle with the amount of content they need to consume. And it's just important to remind ourselves that, we have to take it one step at a time.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like a stimulation overload on all the things that we're having to take in, especially as young people having to take in all the information from the world, from school, from social media, honestly. So that's great insight. Thank you.
Yeah, we're constantly being given information.
And trying to sift through all that must be a lot.
Yeah.
I definitely understand that. PJ, did you have anything you wanted to contribute to this specific question?
Yeah, so kind of going off of what Lucas said, one thing that I personally feel isn't taken into consideration by adults is that healing takes time, and especially mentally, you really need to kind of take a step back, feel of where you're at, but also you need to know that there are people that are there for you, not trying to push you, come on, we gotta go, go faster, get better quicker. Because one thing that I've definitely experienced with my parents and dealing with my mental health is that something that I heard a lot from them is, well, when we were kids, we didn't deal with it that way. We couldn't just go up and talk to everyone. And times are definitely different now, where it is getting normalized to speaking about your mental health and what you really need um as a young person to kind of continue and move on. And I feel like they are much better now that I've explained it to them and kind of led them in the right direction. um but that's just kind of like one thing that I have noticed a lot, not only with myself but with peers, is that it definitely takes time.
Yeah, definitely. I saw someone in the chat say that taking things one step at a time is great advice. And I agree with that, especially when you're trying to get the adults that are already in your life, like parents and other of those adults related to you, to sort of get on board and understand what your generation is going through, not necessarily the mindset that they're stuck in. So thank you, PJ. We can go on to the next question. How have you seen your peers impacted by mental health concerns? And see, Lucas, you want to take this one?
All right. With mental health concerns, I've seen a lot of my male friends, and even just like my male peers in general. They sort of have this idea that their mental health is not as important. It's the, male mentality, the toxic one, where they just push their feelings, they don't think about them, and that's it. That's the end of the story. They do not talk about it. And it's affected them. Like, they feel even more of a need now, especially with like the topics of mental health going around, to repress them. Like, it's unfortunate. With my other peers and friends, I've seen them struggle, but I've done my best to help them. Like, my friends often struggle with working school. There's no breaks whatsoever. And encouraging people and making sure that they are taking care of themselves, and they have someone to like talk to, someone that's listening, someone that's there for them, that has helped them a lot.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's hard being a youth going through your own things and also seeing your peers sort of go through those same sort of struggles. So especially finding ways to help them while you're trying to help yourself, that makes sense. Let's see. Anyone else want to hop in on this topic? Have you seen your peers impacted by mental health?
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
I think that it's very normal for people, young people especially, to feel very comfortable to reach out to their peers via text or like DMs or even like a FaceTime call. And so I think people are very familiar with having difficult conversations with people their age about, I don't feel very well. I feel like ending my life. I feel discouraged, or like it's been mentioned, there are no breaks, there's no way for me to get out. And that's kind of what I feel as a huge contributor to this. I need to end my life to get out of this situation, or to get out of this pattern of life, this season of life mentality. um, and so especially through the pandemic, a lot of college students were brought home and off of campuses, or if they were on campuses, felt very isolated while on these campuses, which disrupted a ton of the social growth that would have gone on during what would have been the end to my freshman and beginning of my sophomore year, and um, on through that. And so just making sure that we practice showing off that, my mental health isn't perfect as an adult, and it's okay that yours isn't either. This has been the first year, um, or the first time, I think, where a mentor or somebody that's really cared about me and has been there to help me developmentally has just said, it's okay to go home. And it's okay to just rest and just take a break. And that was so incredibly refreshing, and but scary at the same time, when I feel like it shouldn't have had to have been. Just because I think a lot of people our age put a lot of pressure on themselves to consistently perform to the best of their ability, and perform consistently, and for, not only their entire childhood, but as has been mentioned, in school and any extracurriculars and any jobs that they have, and then, pressure to meet your own needs as much as possible. As much as we can provide peer networks of support is incredibly helpful for our peers, just because they, that might be the most comfortable, the most familiar way that people have to go about expressing these, even at just like a introductory, I don't know how to describe this feeling, but it's really painful. And so providing those peer networks would be wonderful. And then also just making sure that we're comfortable when it's possible and when it makes sense to say, it's okay for you to keep pushing and to build that resilience. It's also okay for you to take a step back and just go home and rest.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the things that happened when this pandemic, this weird break in time happened, is showing people how to sort of stand for themselves and to take care of themselves. And we had to adjust from having that in-person contact to sort of moving to a different way of socializing with one another, building those social networks. So definitely agree with you there, Tori. PJ, did you have anything for this question?
Yeah, so what I was going to say goes along with both of Lucas's and Tori's responses. But also I've seen my friends impacted by mental health kind of because of their parents. Like they need help and they want to reach out to their parents, but the parents have the set mindset of, oh, well, it's in your head, get over it and move on. And again, that could be generational, it could be how they grew up. But they are constantly like telling me, texting me, like, hey, I don't know what to do. Like, my parents are really putting that stress and that strain on me. They are part of my issue. And I'm like, I'm kind of in the same boat. Not sure what to do, but we have gone to a counselor, we have gone to a trusted adult that maybe isn't their parents, or maybe it's like a close relative, for them to get help. But that is something that I have noticed over and over and over again, constantly, is that most of the time, at least with my friends, it tends to kind of put even more stress and strain on them because they want to ask for help with their mental health, and because they don't know what to do, they don't know how to move on by themselves or with people who are literally the same age as them. Um, and they want to reach out to their parents, but they can't because they don't know what type of response they're going to get in return.
Yeah, it seems like it's this like trend of uncertainty when it comes to figuring out what's going on with ourselves, how we bring it out to the forefront, and sort of how we even express it in the first place. So it's just difficult in general. Let's see, let's go on to the next question. How has having a mentor positively affected your mental health? PJ, you want to take that one?
Yes. So I have a lovely college mentor, and she has really helped me a lot through growing, through preparing me for college, through telling me like situations that she has had in high school and how she kind of grew from those experiences, has really like helped me put a focus on what I like need to do, what support I'm expected to have when like when I leave high school, when I go on to college, just having her there to kind of like, hey, I'm proud of you, like, hey, if you need to talk, I'm here. It's always like super, super helpful because obviously as a young person, I'm not always going to be the first one to reach out because of like uncertainty or nervousness. So always kind of like having her there that like knows what's going going on in my life and knows what's happening because I keep in touch with her frequently, um, really helps because even if I don't want to reach out to her first, I can always go back and look at the previous conversation that we have had and kind of like go from there, like, hey, maybe I should update her about this, or hey, maybe I should tell her how this went. And it really has helped out a lot.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. It's great to have a relationship with someone you can take at your own pace. Anyone else want to take this next? Maybe Lucas?
Yeah. My mentor was actually the first person I ever met from Big Brothers Big Sisters, and it was my first day at Voice, I believe, and it was just so amazing being able to see such like a young person going off and just doing his best to thrive at what he does. And so I think it was just quite fitting that the first person I met ended up becoming my mentor through Voice. He's been like here for me for a lot of times. I believe one time I was at work and I was just so mentally drained, and he came in for something, and I remember just being so glad I saw him, so glad that I could see him, and I broke down crying. And he's always just been the person I could go to, the person I could talk to, and he would listen. And he's just always wanted to be, a better person. He's always improving himself, and it's just wonderful to have someone to look up to like that.
Great. I love hearing that. Tori, you want to take it from here?
Absolutely. A lot of the mentoring that I've had started when I got to college, which was phenomenal and definitely needed. And it's been really, really incredible to have people that have followed me all the way from my freshman year up until my senior year and have watched me grow as a person and have personally themselves invested in that growth. Um, and a lot of that has come in the form of accountability in the sense of not necessarily always just driving me to do better just for the sake of doing better, but being able to look at me and say, I know that you can do better. I've seen you do better. Let's tailor this. Let's fix our approach. Let's find a new way to make this happen and make it happen in a way that we could all be proud of. And that even like these times where I've left meetings irritated or been like, whatever, like they don't know anything, like it's fine. Like I am doing my best, like, and wanting to have that attitude because hit dogs will holler. It's been really, really incredible to know that even when it's not always the advice that I want to hear or the thing that I necessarily was ready to hear right in that instant, it's something that came from their heart. It's something that was meant out of love. And it's something that I've been able to take with me for the long term. And I know that it's because they've seen something in me that's worth nurturing and worth investing in. And so having somebody, even when I feel like I'm failing or when I feel like my mental health is about to give out, saying, I see something in you. I know that you can do this. Let's just figure out how collaboratively we can get that done. And having that network of support from different adults on campus has been hugely formative to my development as a professional and a student and as just a person in general. It's been just like absolutely life-changing to have adults that are so open about being willing to talk about my mental health, being willing to talk about what's going on in my life, as well as what's going on in theirs. So it's not necessarily all one-sided sharing. It's been just really has transformed my college experience.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. So we'll go on to the next question, which is, how can adults, specifically mentors, better support young people as they navigate the realities of living in today's world? And I'll throw it back to you, Tori.
I think just being willing, this panel is super cool because it's so many adults and so many probably pretty close in age people who are willing to learn from young people, which is super encouraging because I think young people are used to feeling like they need to be on the defensive if they are to share their experiences with mental health, with navigating society for the first time, really, and becoming adults and growing into a society where, um, when we think about at least Gen Z being born in the wake of 9/11, and then having never experienced a society without that level of fear and that level of xenophobia, and then going on to being promised a post-racial society in certain elections, and then being very confused when again like that carpet's kind of ripped out from under our feet with the next one to come, and feeling like our values as a generation, and obviously that's generalizing quite a bit, but some of those larger held values of our generation haven't been valued. And that could look like sustainability. It could look like concerns about climate change, concerns about race relations and racism, all of these different things. So I think just first and foremost, providing a space for young people to feel like adults are hearing them, are wanting to do something constructive with what they have to say, and just are willing to learn from their experiences, because due to, at least how I see it, because of how old Gen Z is and how old some of these younger generations are, and how that's coincided with the development of the internet and that exponential growth. Gen Z has become kind of an unofficial expert in a lot of these areas as far as digital relations, what gets people's attention. And so there's like a wealth of knowledge that exists there, and a wealth of insight and familiarity that remains somewhat untapped. And so I think just reminding young people that they have important things to contribute, that it's okay to not know what to do. It's okay to feel lost or confused, and that's a normal part of the growing process. And just supporting our young people to do the absolute best with the experiences that they've had, and the unique insight that's provided, that can provide to new situations, and just validating what they can bring.
For sure. It was kind of like bringing up that individualized experience again with the relationship, and understanding the generation and what they're going through now, and sort of catering that relationship to what they're experiencing. So thank you for that, Tori. Who wants to take it next?
Yeah, I really agree with Tori on how it's important for us to have spaces. It's important to be listened to. Everyone needs someone to listen to, but on top of that, it's not just about listening. People want to hear back. It's important that that we are being listened to, but also our words are being taken into consideration. The worst thing I have heard is that from a person that I was looking up to, that I felt I was being supported by, was that I was not trying hard enough. As a person that has extremely high goals and values and expectations for myself, that was the most soul-crushing thing I could hear. I put my 100% into everything I do. And I think that's one of the main reasons I experienced mental drain so bad. And it's important for like adults, mentors, to know that sometimes the person that they are trying to support will set like expectations that are above themselves, because I am famous for that. And bringing that person back down to earth, and helping setting attainable goals, and supporting them with that is extremely helpful.
Nice. Thank you, Lucas. I definitely feel you on not only setting those attainable goals, but feeling that helpful encouragement from the person that we're looking up to, ways that push us forward and not necessarily keep us stuck in where we are, but that help uplift what we're doing. So thank you for sharing. PJ, you want to contribute to this question?
Yeah, so definitely going along with what both Lucas and Tori said. And I really want to go on a point that Lucas said, was not only being listened to, but also being heard. Because the fact that our parents or adults around us are probably like listening to us, like they're hearing what we have to say. And they're just like, oh yeah, we'll see what we can do. But also like making sure that they genuinely like have good intentions for us and that they want part of our ideas and our thoughts to kind of be put forward and like put first, especially like when thinking about new projects, thinking about new things that society may experience. I feel like, especially today in this world, going off of what Tori said, it's really important that adults are hearing and actually taking young people's thoughts into consideration when going forward on a project or starting a new project.
Yes, thank you, PJ. It's definitely important that young people feel heard in their efforts and being able to feel supported in what they're trying to do and what they're trying to put out into the world, especially when it comes to being nurtured and growing in their authentic selves. So thank you. We can go on to the next question. And I'll leave this open to any of the three panelists who wants to answer first. But the question is, what is something about you and this generation that makes you excited for the future?
Yeah, if the others don't mind, I want to answer this one first. So something that I'm personally like super excited for is the fact that our generation is pushing so many different changes and opportunities throughout the world, and most of them are dealing with creating a more sustainable environment in society, but also a more hate-free and judgment-free society. And obviously it's never going to be 100% hate-free or 100% judgment-free. However, I do think that it is very exciting that we are pushing more thoughts and inventions that are allowing for kind of young people to just kind of like lead the way and feel more God, I can't think of the word, but more kind of connected with everyone without feeling judged or hated for being simply who they want to be.
Right, like I'm very excited for the empowerment that we have. We are despite all of the challenges, I see that we are a very strong generation. Like we are getting stuff done. We are doing our absolute best despite all of the obstacles in our way, and we're not afraid to be ourselves. That is the biggest part. That is what makes us different, is that we have not been afraid to be ourselves since the moment we have become the generation leading.
I'm really, really excited about how thoughtful this generation is and how concerned I feel that our generation is about bettering the world and leaving a better legacy than maybe we've seen others model for us in the past. And so it's really cool to me to see. I think sometimes it can be frustrating for people my age because we're so wrapped up with having different discussions about these things or trying to find what the solution is or what the best course of action is, that sometimes we get so caught up in the planning of it and the consideration of it and the discourse that sometimes it can feel frustrating, as though we don't have any options for actual like action plans or actual progress to be made. And so I think that it's really encouraging, even though there are like those difficulties that everybody else has discussed. I'm really encouraged by the fact that people are still willing to listen and learn, even though it can be overwhelming sometimes, and are really, really interested and willing to try new things and be experimental in our path towards progress.
Amazing. Thank you all. I agree. The capacity for change and the hard work that's put behind wanting to actually change what we see in our futures, that's I agree, what sets this generation apart and what makes it really exciting to be a part of. So thank you all so much. And let's go ahead and give a Zoom round of applause to our brilliant panelists today. Thank you all so much for your insight and all of your thoughtful participation. I just want to say none of us would have a glimmer of an idea of what youth go through if it were not for young people like yourselves who are willing to use your voices and your stories to just inform inquiring minds about what is happening in the world of young people, what's happening in your minds. So thank you so much for your time, for your participation. And now I'd like to transition and go ahead and introduce Mr. Earl Brown, LMHP, and the creator of SOAR, which is a trauma-informed social emotional learning curriculum that is in Nebraska schools. Mr. Brown, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'm excited to hear about the work you've put into the community.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate your leadership, Alana. And I'm also really enlightened and gladdened, and I am so glad to be in the midst of Tori and PJ and Lucas. What you have given me might be more than what I'm able to participate. So you've done great work. I'm learning as I share the piece that I want to have to share. Now, at SOAR, well, first of all, let me start off. I'm being a licensed mental health practitioner. At some point in time, I realized that it might be, I think if I work with one client 1 hour a day, 8 hours a day, that's maybe 8 people. But I wanted to have a greater impact. So that's when we decided to get into the after school programming, because in 1 hour, I may have contact with 15 people. Okay. And that's the goal, to be more accessible to a larger number of people. And that's how we got into the after school environment. And our SOAR program, which SOAR stands for self-regulation, other focus, awareness of self and our behaviors, and relationship building. Okay, so in going into the schools, this was a model that we wanted to bring, but then as time went on, we developed a partnership with Mentoring National, who helped us develop and redefine a logic model that focused on mentoring, and as well as mentoring, peer mentoring. Because each of one of you, Tori, PJ, and Lucas, I'm sure that at some point in time, you have peers that might seek your help and direction. So if it helps to proliferate the help that's needed in the society the way we have today. I appreciate, Jake, your generational piece early on, and I had made some notes, and a Generation X, millennials, 30 years ago, there was a major sociological impact on a portion of society, and which was crack addicted mothers. Pushing forward 30 years, the Gen X and Gen Alpha generations have been affected by quarantine and pandemic, which goes across all areas of society. And there's no country from Australia to Alaska, from New Zealand to Zanzibar, that have not been affected by pandemic and quarantine. It's said that projected that by the end of 2025, 2.5 million babies will have been born globally. Generation Alpha is probably the largest generation in the history of the world. So I'm thinking that it's probably going to take more effort than just the counselors and the therapists of the world. Um, because just like the price of eggs uh, have been rising, so so has the cost of counseling and therapy. So how do we support the needs of a generation? Okay, I think that mentoring and peer mentoring is such an important hope shot that might help us to do a better job with keeping pace with the needs of this growing segment of society. The largest generation ever, a Generation Alpha, that's impressive. I think that we're off to a good start in doing seminars like we're doing today. Once again, Tori, PJ, and Lucas, I'm so impressed with each of you. It gives me a hope for the future. And as you continue to learn and grow and not only be mentored, but also become mentors, it makes me extremely hopeful for subsequent generations.
Nice. Thank you so much for that, Mr. Brown. You kind of touched on the National Mentoring Resource Center a bit at the beginning, but I did want to ask, how did you benefit from technical assistance through this resource center and how it's sort of benefited your program?
So what happened initially was they helped us to develop a logic model, and with this logic model, mentoring logic model, helped us to focus on some of the aspects that we are critiqued on as an after-school program. And I took the screen down, so I have to take my glasses off. What we were looking at is a goal addressing the problem of school suspension, lack of emotional regulation, and damaged relationships with peers. Some of the goals that we wanted to achieve were self-awareness improvement, self-management improvement, responsible decision-making, relationship skills improvement, social awareness, and social competencies. Ultimately, what we want and the goals that we have personally in SOAR and that are consistent with the Mentor National or improving academic success, improving school attendance, prevention of contact with the juvenile justice system and incarceration, increased social capital, and greater employability. And let me add just another little piece about the reducing the contacts with the juvenile justice system. I was in a meeting the other day with a probation officer, and it was at a shelter with a kid that was just released and in the process of hopefully returning back home. But one of the things that was going on with the facility that he was in was a scorecard or some type of behavior management sheet that spoke to how you respond to conflict and conflict resolution. How do you refer to, how do you handle constructive criticism? How do you minimize your anger response? And how are you showing improvement by listening more and reacting, maybe not in such a drastic manner? So another part of this is, I really believe that mental health, especially in working with youth, what my goal is to get into the schools, at middle schools, and get into the ages of alpha generation. And hopefully, if we could get some of these mentoring skills and these things into the life of some younger people, maybe they won't come across a counseling couch. Maybe I won't need to see them in therapy. You know, this to me this mentoring aspect and peer mentoring is prevention. Prevention from people going to, once you learn how to share your emotions and share what you think, maybe you don't have to go to the counseling council. Maybe you don't have to have that visit with incarceration in juvenile incarcerations, because you're better able to express yourself, and you're more, feel like you'll be more supported by parents, peers, and your community.
Great, thank you. And I have one more question for you, actually. When you're speaking about how you're working towards maybe keeping people from having to go to therapy or having those contacts with the juvenile system and things of that nature, what do you have any sort of stories or of the impact that your program has had in relation to this, or in any sort of capacity?
Well, yes. It's once again, the goal is with mentoring is, to me, prevention. When you look at the statistics and the numbers of incarceration, the rising of violence occasions, the rising impact of gun violence, I asked a group of kids that I work with in the after school program, it might have been about 15 of them. I said, how many of you know someone, family member or peer that have been affected by gun violence? I would say that 90% of their hands were raised. You know, for me, for my generation, that is astronomical. And I imagine the impact that it has on this post 9/11 generation, this pandemic quarantine generation is very impactful. But all of these numbers of kids have not been able to participate in mental health therapy. The cost of mental health is raised astronomically, just like the price of a dozen eggs. Inflation. So to impact those numbers, it seems reasonable to me that mentoring and peer mentoring, and once again, I take my hat off to Lucas and PJ and Tori, peer mentoring can help to relieve some of this tension that's on the fabric of society with their age peers. And hopefully that this gives more opportunities for people to work through some of those issues that have been unspoken of, unresolved, and can be a prevention and a precursor to them ever having to go with treatment. You know what I do? You know what it's called? Talk therapy. And it's not me talking. It's me letting you talk and share with me what's going on with you in your world today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brown. It sounds like you do a lot for the young people in our community, especially who've been affected by things outside of the pandemic and 9/11, but just in their everyday lives, the gun violence and just the contact with police and juvenile justice. So thank you so much for your work, for your input. Thank you. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Jake as we move forward with questions from the audience for either our brilliant youth panelists or for Mr. Brown.
Thanks so much, Alana. And again, just a huge thank you to Mr. Brown, to Tori, PJ, Lucas, and Alana. These conversations can be really heavy and can be a lot to have. So a lot of appreciation for the vulnerability and openness and willingness to share your experiences and knowledge with all of us. If you haven't gotten a chance to take a look at the chat, there's a lot of love and a lot of appreciation for the insights that you've all shared so far. So if everybody just could take another moment to show some love in the chat, because again, these are hard conversations to have, and I think already I have pages and pages of notes in my notebook, so I'm excited to dive into some audience questions here. I think a lot of what we talked about, and I think all three of you actually touched on this, Tori, PJ, and Lucas, about the idea of how much is expected of young people today, and how many different responsibilities on top of figuring out and dealing with just like social issues of the world, politics, and all of these other things that are coming up that are really intense. A couple of our questions are focused on what has helped you in balancing these things? What has helped you when it comes to finding like that work, school, life balance, and taking care of yourself? And maybe how have, if at all, mentors helped you in that process? And so anybody can feel free to answer first. I'll leave it up to you all.
I think the first thing that's really been helpful is being really firm about my professional boundaries. And so giving myself grace to ask for extensions, giving myself grace to just say, you know what, it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm about to turn my computer off. It's done. And I'm going to watch a movie. I'm going to go to bed. And just like decide when done is done for me, and not having to necessarily validate that with, I feel physically ill. I feel, an anxiety attack is coming on. Or I feel that I'm because I might disappoint somebody, or because I might drop the ball a little bit, that means that I need to sacrifice every last piece of me that I have to give. And so that has helped incredibly with just reducing the burnout of getting through just my undergraduate degree alone. And so that's been super helpful, and having mentors who support that is incredibly helpful as well.
Yes, that was like the first thing my mind jumped to was boundaries, because that was the thing I was told, that having those boundaries will help tremendously, and they have. I remember when I had my first job, and it was work, then my job, and then that was just that dance every day, even the weekends. Like I needed time to just not, because boundaries are important.
That's something that my mind also first went to, was boundaries. Because I've had school, I'm also involved in so many other extracurricular activities. And I also have a part-time job that I have stuck with for about 3 years now. And that, I always tell my parents this, that it just seems so surreal to me that I've been able to balance and kind of like figure out what has worked for me. And I feel like as a young person, that is something that you really have to do. You have to kind of take the time and find out what things work for me and what doesn't. Like you need to find the boundaries, because without boundaries, like everything will fall apart so quickly. Yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Yeah, boundaries are absolutely so important, but so hard to set and so hard to maintain. So it's great to hear that that's something that's already on all of your radars, and that you're all practicing that already. I think the next sort of direction that I want to go in is, Tori, I loved when you were talking about the wealth of knowledge that young people have, because, and I think PJ and Lucas, you also touched on this at a couple points, so many conversations around social issues and mental health and all these things are so normalized within the younger generations. So I guess my question is, what have your mentors, or what have adults done in your lives, or in your relationships with mentors, to help support you through those conversations, or empower you to have those conversations? Yeah.
I think first is the most helpful thing is just familiarizing themselves and getting comfortable with having difficult conversations and having ways for themselves to cope with that in the moment, and then be able to grieve that appropriately as an adult in the situation. So even if I come to an adult with a situation that's, they can't necessarily intervene, they can't necessarily fix it, all they can do is sit there and just be present in that uncomfort and that, or discomfort, with me, and just really bear witness to my testimony and my story, and what's going on with me, has been incredibly helpful. And so I think just making sure that young people know that they have full permission to be children in situations. And the way that adolescence has changed as like a societal concept is really interesting to me as well. So just giving people permission to take all of these things on and give them full support and say, I know you can do it. It's just a matter of let's use our discernment, let's use our wisdom to make sure that we're picking out the right things to do and that we have the support necessary to get that done in an intelligent way and in a sustainable way.
Thank you. Yeah, I think. Oh, Lucas, do you want to share a little bit on that?
Yeah, you're just so well spoken, and I'm genuinely jealous. I just wanted. I had it in my mind. It's gone now.
If you can think of it, we can always come back to this question as well. And Lucas, you are also amazing and thoughtful and intelligent. So I just want to, all three of you are. Again, I think if you haven't taken a look at the chat, people are showering you all with praise. So I just want to really highlight that. And so that kind of leads to a follow-up question that someone had in the audience is how do you or what have adults done to help you build trust with them? So like obviously bringing these conversations and bringing challenges with mental health are really heavy conversations. So what has an adult in your life done specifically to make you feel like, oh, I can trust this person? And again, anybody can feel free to jump in there.
Okay, so go ahead.
Sorry, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier with my parents and how they obviously were stuck on one mindset that, oh, they like just get over it. It's one thing, it's a little thing, get over it. My dad particularly has our relationship is much better than it was pre-pandemic. And I think a lot of that is because we were really able to just kind of spend time together and kind of figure out what works for both of us and how, like, what environment both of us need to be in for us to kind of be able to get into a topic like mental health or like depression, which like has been stated multiple times in this conversation is a very heavy topic, which is why I feel like environment definitely matters. What type of environment or social cues you are in definitely matters in the situation. Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest thing I always will go to is being heard, being listened to, because the one adult in my life that helped me get on antidepressants because I'm extremely bipolar and my lows are very low. She was probably one of the first adults to ever listen to me, and she was the reason why I finally got some of the help that I did need. And sometimes it takes one adult to get through to another, because you're going to come across adults that not every one of them are going to listen to someone younger than them, because, you know, it's the adultism. I'm older than you, I know exactly what's up. And having an adult to help communicate how you are feeling to someone else is extremely helpful.
Exactly. I think that was such an incredible point too, of being willing to advocate for young people. And then showing that you are invested not just in the person that you directly are mentoring, but showing that you respect the pronouns of every single person, regardless of their pronouns, that you are genuinely concerned about the issues that you speak on, the issues that your students or your mentees are going through, and that it's not something that you do just so that you can make sure that this one relationship is successful. And so a lot of my mentors have really been intentional about building rapport with me, which is incredible. And I'm very, very grateful to them for doing that, of just really showing that it is a safe space and a brave space to discuss mental health issues. It's a safe space to talk about the things that are going on in our lives that have nothing to do with the topics or the projects at hand. It's okay to segue a little bit and have that personal time, and just always taking interest in asking those questions. And I think that people are afraid to pry or afraid to be getting into topics that people will be uncomfortable to confront or uncomfortable to talk about. But I think that just showing an interest in saying, hey, I'm here to listen. I'm very interested in what's going on with you. I'm very interested in how you're feeling. Um, and then showing that they are willing to talk to other adults about how real mental health is, because a lot of through my work at the hotline, we have a lot of calls from very, very young children all the way up, probably until the age where they're about ready to start leaving home. Um, and they're just very concerned because they have no adults that believe that mental health is real that are in their corner. And they don't have any adults that are concerned enough to really advocate for them or get their needs met. Um, and so I think that just showing that you all around really are ready to act behind what you say that your values are, and then that is truly who you are. It's not something that you pretend to do for your mentee. It's where you really are about what you talk about.
I love that. Thank you all for answering that. And Tori, I think especially towards the end there, that's a perfect segue into the next question that we have from the audience. And something that we talked on a little bit earlier was it was around peer mentoring. And I remember, Lucas, you were talking a lot about seeing the effects of some of your peers, especially with young boys and young men, and not feeling like they can talk about their feelings. So one of the questions that we got was, can any of you describe any differences that you've kind of seen or observed between you and your peers who don't have mentors? So again, I'm so glad to hear that you all have had these adults in your lives who have been so impactful and have listened. But for the folks that, for the young people who don't have those mentors that you know, have you been able to observe any differences in the ways that you've navigated your mental health challenges or just life in general?
Yeah, I think that it's been incredibly helpful to have both peer mentors and then adults who are far older than I am to be able to be in my corner and add that support. It's helped me be able to articulate myself and my ideas and my feelings better to other adults in ways that translate well. And so I can be an effective communicator on behalf of myself and my needs, but also on behalf of other people, which is incredibly helpful. Um, Also just making sure that as um, not me just forgetting my thought. Okay, let me let me stop.
No, that's okay. This is fluid. Anybody can jump in. PJ, Lucas, do either of you have any thoughts on like friends that you have that maybe don't have mentors? What have you seen as sort of differences in the ways that they've navigated mental health?
What I go ahead.
You're fine. You can go ahead. You're good.
Okay. What I have noticed is that I had a friend that joined like mid school year, and he did not have a mentor. And like now that he sort of does, he's in a part of the voice group now, and so he has multiple people in his corner. I've noticed that he is not struggling as much. Like having these people to talk to and like an environment that is safe has helped him so much with the way he handles situations, like with his mental health, because he's always been terribly anxious, just like me. And he couldn't handle that as well beforehand. And having these people that support him is so important.
Great. So we have another question that I think is really interesting and is something that I've thought a lot about in the mentoring program that I work with. And so from your perspective, does the age of the mentor matter to you all? So does it matter, or are you able to find relationships and develop relationships with people who are maybe much older than you are? So maybe people who are in that baby boomer generation, or have you found that has been more of a challenge? So the basic question there is, does the age matter when it comes to finding a mentor for you?
So I definitely feel like it 100% depends on the person, the young person who is trying to find a mentor, trying to find a therapist. It depends on that person. For me personally, I have both a therapist and a mentor. And for a mentor, because I do have a few different mentors. I have one through NCPA and then a couple through different programs. For me, my mentor, I would like them to be like roughly same age, same generation. Doesn't necessarily like matter to me, but something that they can definitely like relate to me with, like as far as social norms, like society, like just simple things like that, that they can um be on the same level with me, kind of. Um, just something within the same age group, like teens, early 20s, just something that kind of I feel like I can connect to you with on multiple different things, without someone having to say, oh, I remember that when I was your age. And
Now, see, for me, I don't think it would particularly matter. Like, we do have, the requirement for big brothers, big sisters that, we at least have some things in common, of course. And that's preferred always. But getting to know someone and their lived experiences for me is something that I would genuinely love. Like, I love getting the point of view of other people and applying that to my own life. So that is something I could genuinely benefit and learn from as a person seeking a mentor. And that's just me.
I think that some of the best mentors I've had have ended up being a lot older than I am and have really shown me the ropes of how to enter professional spaces, how to navigate situations that I've never been in before, and also act as um, like not necessarily an elder in the community, just based on how old they are and kind of their standing. Um, kind of model what it looks like to be a leader throughout your life, and to model what it looks like to be a support for other people throughout your life, and make that a lifelong um, process of learning and helping to build community. And so that's been incredibly helpful, even when sometimes we don't always see eye to eye. I know that even if we don't agree on everything, or if they're not necessarily um, at the same place where I'm at, they're willing to meet me where I'm at. They're willing to attempt to understand every single time. And that's what matters to me, is the fact that they care about me. It doesn't necessarily matter as much about how much we have in common, um, at least in my experiences. But then also, like PJ, I think we definitely have very similar experiences, where I know that one mentor might have my back in one area, especially, or I might really need to be giving this one person a call for this specific issue, but it's helpful that I have another mentor that's going to absolutely knock this one out of the park.
I love this. All of you in the audience, we're getting this information for free right now. There's so many questions that I want to continue to ask you all. But I think one question that is coming up in the chat, and it's sort of similar to this, but it sounds like from what I'm hearing from you all, is the age piece doesn't matter as much as the piece about finding those other interests that are bridging the two of you, the things that you have in common, and that willingness to be to listen and to learn from your mentee and from the young person. So are there any other things from your perspective that you think is important for mentoring programs to consider when matching adults and young people? So any other factors that you all think are important to think about when it comes to creating a mentoring relationship?
I think that as much as we can, just matching people who do have that baseline understanding of what an experience might entail. Like if you know that you have young people who need mentors that know what the experience is to experience gun violence, or to experience not being documented, certain issues like that, certain racial components, certain gender components, it might be helpful to have those things in common with a mentee. But more than that, just knowing that as long as your mentor and your mentee have a willingness to learn and take the time necessary to build that rapport, I think that outweighs a lot of like the identity components, in a sense. As long as we have people that are willing to connect and willing to build those boundaries, I think sometimes that can pick up the slack where having certain things in common might leave us feeling a little bit nervous about making those connections. But I think that just more than anything, if you have people that are willing to mentor, being able to take advantage of that willingness is more important than trying to find the perfect match every single time.
Right. And I think it's just also important to note that even if it seems like two people are very different, there could be a lot of things in common.
I think that that's kind of what actually happened with um, my with my mentor and I through NCPA. We, if you were to look at our report, you would notice so many differences. But we ended up getting really close and we talked and we found out that we actually have shared a lot of experiences with one another. So even though maybe hobbies or interests aren't something similar with a mentee and mentor, I do feel like Tori and like Lucas said, the willingness to connect with one another is there. You're really able to find like the thin line of what you do have in common, like experiences, rather than being as simple as like hobbies or interests.
Awesome, thank you. So I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. And I think this next question, honestly, maybe everybody can answer. I'd love to hear your perspective, Mr. Brown and Alana as well. Someone is asking about what do you think is the best way to educate parents on how to support their children in the community? And so, yeah, just thinking about incorporating parents, guardians, and other types of caregivers into this system. What is the best way to educate parents on these things?
If I could say, the best way to educate parents and teachers and educators is ask the kids. Oh, I didn't mean to drop the mic on you like that.
I
But
think
it's simply, that's it.
I would say for me, and I actually just had a recent experience with this with my dad. He was curious about why I use she, they pronouns. And so I sort of had to break it down to him and explain to him why I identify in this way, because I identify as a gender. And so it just fits more, it suits more to me. So I think it's just that initial conversation and letting them ask questions, even if they can sort of be, because sometimes people just genuinely don't know. So what a question to me could come off as more a bit offensive, but it's sort of also it grows from there. It can only go up from there. So my dad started doing his own research, and then from there it was just open back and forth conversation, him asking some more questions. And I think it's just being open enough to have that conversation with the parents, because it's also scary to identify outside of what a parent raised you as, because I wasn't sure how they would react. And also with my mom, not sure how she's going to react. So it's really just seeing, sort of feeling out their vibe is how I like to put it.
Right. With parents, it's sort of a tricky question because, not all parents will be open to having these conversations, but some will absolutely certainly have them. But it's definitely talking to them and getting to know how they feel about certain things and seeing whether or not they would be able to have that conversation. It's definitely a way to get it.
I think it can be helpful to try to rope like parents and families into the mentoring process as much as possible, even if that looks like, hey, these are like 5 questions that you can bring home and ask your parents about, like kind of about what we talked about, and get a read on what they have to say about it, or very non-threatening, like conversation starting things that can help to bridge that boundary that might exist. also just having other adults that are willing to very loudly advocate for the realness of mental health. And that really has become my soapbox of just making sure that people feel as though they are adequately resourced to have these conversations with their children. I think that there's a lot of grief that comes with seeing your children struggle. And a lot of times I think that can be a barrier to providing the care that you may want to provide as a parent. Um, and just aren't able to because of multiple factors of feeling like you're out of your depth or that you might make it worse. Um, and so just continuing to plug these things like hotlines that people can call. Nebraska Family Hotline is one. And all of these different things, just making sure that parents feel well resourced enough and supported enough. And as though they're doing the right thing by making sure that these conversations are as comfortable as possible for their children.
Wow, I love that. I think that's such an incredible point about the grief that some parents go through and caregivers go through when they see their child struggle. And I think that's a really beautiful perspective. And yeah, so I think one last question to end on a high and positive note. We sort of already touched on it in the first section, but I'm wondering, is there anything that any of your mentors have ever said to you that has made you feel empowered or made you feel like Lucas, you mentioned a lot about feeling drained, kind of filled up your cup again. Like what is something that a mentor said to you that's just made you feel good?
Well, he personally said, if I remember correctly, to keep my head up. It's important to take breaks, and that if I ever needed him, if I needed help with like school or anything, I could absolutely take my stuff to voice and have other people, help me get all of those emotions out and sort of, try and help with the pain I was going through. And that was Fernando's amazing. Yeah.
I'm probably in the baby boomer generation, but I also have a mentor. And one of the most encouraging things that my mentor told me was, he gave me permission to say, Earl, it's okay to make a mistake. Because I think I tended towards perfectionism. And the more I'm able to step away from that and be in the category of humanism, the more kinder I am even to myself.
Right. I think I struggle so hard with that because I am a perfectionist at heart. Yeah. He's also like, tried to nudge me in the direction of, progress over perfection. So
I feel you, Lucas. Awesome. And thank you, Mr. Brown, for that. I think someone summed it up really well in the chat, is good mentors have good mentors. So I love that. And so now with that, I wish we could have another hour with you all of asking questions. This has been really great, but we do have to wrap up. So I will share my screen one more time really quickly, just to get through some last little housekeeping items. We definitely want you all to stay connected with us. So feel free to email us at that email, collaborativeWebinarSeries@mentoring.org. If you have any feedback, tweet us with the hashtag mentoringwebinar, or of course, we have all of this information on our website. Again, a huge thank you to the young people, Mr. Brown, Alana, and all of their represented mentoring programs. If you would like to learn more, you could feel free to click any of these links when the slides are sent out. And definitely learn more. And I think there's that hotline that Tori was mentioning in case you'd like to use that as a resource. Additional resources that we have from Mentor. If you haven't already, make sure to connect with your local affiliate if there is one in your area. There are resources for training, resources, public awareness, and advocacy. We also have the Mentoring Connector, which is a tool where you can recruit mentors just by submitting your mentoring program. And it'll be displayed to potential mentors and folks looking for mentors across the country. Last but not least, we have the National Mentoring Resource Center, sponsored by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, where you can access evidence-based mentoring resources and apply for no-cost training and technical assistance. Again, this will all be sent out in an email, the recording, the slides, resources, etc. And make sure to join us next month. So we have a webinar on exploring funding opportunity, the successful expansion of mentoring programs, and that'll be happening April 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I'll stop sharing. And again, a huge thank you to our amazing panelists, to Alana, our facilitator, Mr. Brown for being here, and the Mentor Nebraska team for helping to organize this. This has been really amazing. And again, I'll be sending you all the chat because you all have a lot of fans now. But it's been great to be here with all of you, and hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Hey,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yep, thank you so much.